We're going first off to Punch, ballot paper, local printers set to sue INEC. Now, Nigerian printers under the Chartered Institute of Professional Printers of Nigeria have threatened to sue the Independent National Electoral Commission for allegedly printing a large chunk of electoral materials overseas. Now, the agency says this is illegal and a violation of the SIPN Act 24 of 2007. Now, the council, of course, is charged with the duty of regulating, controlling, managing, and administration of printers, the business of printing, and other print-related matters here in Nigeria.
Yeah, so basically what SIPN is saying is that Section 23B of its law empowers it in the process of regulating printing practitioners to ensure no form of partnership as printers in the country without registered counsel. So their argument is that that automatically excludes Nigerian government organizations, including INEC, from awarding tracts to foreign organizations. Now, I'm a lawyer. Joseph is a lawyer. I don't know that that particular section of the law can be that expansively started, really, because if the technical capacity doesn't exist, and this is something that the CIPO president himself sort of self-confessed, although he also said that with, electronic voting, with PVCs and all of that, that really the era of ballot paper dominance, right, has really passed. If that's the case, then I wonder why he's still making these arguments, right? It feels like he's speaking on both sides, right, of the mouth. So he has said, I actually did some checks, and apparently this has been a long-standing pickle for SIPON. They made the same complaint in the lead up to the 2015 election, and as the lead up to the 2019 election. So it will be interesting for them, right, if they change strategy and actually forgo that engagement with INEC, which they have historically done. And the SIPON president himself admitted that his members are getting more INEC contracts now to just directly suing them and asking, a court to interpret the law. I highly doubt that there will be any court who would expansively interpret the section of the law to mean that, Nigerian are not used for operators. I think it's too late.
All right, let's move on to the next headline, and this also comes from Punch. Budget deficit rises 370%, hits 47 trillion naira under Buhari. Now, according to a report, which was a basic analysis of the budget deficits and projections from 2015 up until 2023, the total budget deficit under the president is set to hit 47.43 trillion naira. Now, a budget deficit, of course, happens when the expenses exceed revenue. And I found this very interesting as well. And this was by Mrs. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. She said there's definitely a need to keep the budget deficit under 3% of GDP due to the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007.
Yeah, I mean that's a very serious observation, because it means that we're actually operating our budget against the law. If we are borrowing money to finance our budget to the tune that we have been doing since 2015. I mean, there is nothing wrong in having a deficit in a budget if it's just for a short period of time, maybe 1 year, 2 years, and you're able to rebound and regain your ground. But to have this consistently finance the budget of the country by borrowing. The deficit simply means that you project to spend X amount of money, but you are generating far less than that in terms of revenue to finance the budget. So you have to look for the money somewhere else. So borrowing in itself is not wrong, but what are you doing with that money? So the cycle of budgeting, in which there are leakages in the system, the money is stolen. Even when it's put into projects, it's not really doesn't really deliver the service that is supposed to accrue to the people. Then that's where the problem, the challenge has been. And then there's not been any conscious effort to put this under control. I say no conscious effort because if you look at our revenue generation profile in terms of oil, which is about the mainstay of the economy, there has not been any effort to stem the leakages that's leading to the loss of revenue. There was a time in recent times when and the dollar was the 1 barrel of crude oil was selling for over $100, and Nigeria wasn't able to produce to its capacity to be able to maximize that such a windfall in quotes. So those are the challenges and the problem we are facing, because that would have been able to stem the deficit in the budget and be able to bring it under control. It is like somebody who is careless about the blood pressure, and this actually has created so much tension in the economy. The blood pressure of the economy, more or less, is so high. It means that the person can die. It's just like any human being. The person is at a point of danger. And this is what this portends for us. And it should be a concern. I hope that the incoming administration would pay careful attention to budgeting, to revenue generation, to be able to stem this tide.
All right. Well, you can, of course, be a part of this conversation. Let us know what your thoughts are. The WhatsApp number is 0809 440 981. And the WhatsApp number, again, 0809 440 981. And you can also tweet at smooth981. Now, moving on to Vanguard, this is also to do with the economy. Nigeria's debt profile may hit 77 trillion naira in June 2023, NECA warns. The Nigeria Employers Consultative Association raised the alarm that Nigeria's debt profile could hit 77 trillion, saying returning the economy to the path of sustainable growth demands certain fundamentals must be gotten right.
Yes, right. So this follows up right from the budget deficit story. So basically, the accumulation of our debts, foreign, domestic, could hit 77 trillion naira according to NECA. We have a situation now where we are in the 50 trillion naira range, right? As it's where the CBN is also aggressively funding the federal government extra budgetarily through ways and advance mechanism, where it basically just print out money for the federal government to meet its short-term commitments. Crude production actually bumped up a bit in December, but it's still way below both production by this time last year of around 1.4 million. As I remember, we did 1.2 million barrels per day, right, in terms of average crude production. But that's also way below our OPEC target of 1.8 million barrels. And so the primary means by which the country generates foreign exchange, right, is seeing some softening. Whichever we look at it, the governments appear stuck in this aggressive debt borrowing vice grip, right? So basically what NECA is warning is that we could easily get 77 trillion naira. We might be looking at the back of 100 trillion naira as current borrowing trends. We've actually looked at the numbers at SPM, and that's that we're on. And if you think that that's a problem, then we only need to look next door at Ghana, what it's trying to do in terms of sorting out its own borrowing and its own commitments to creditors right now. So, Ghana is the latest cautionary tale of, how active borrowing without tying it to sustainable revenue generation, where that could lead you. And I think those lessons are something should be paying close attention. And, I'm not sure this administration will do much about it, but certainly the next administration should look at probably tapering our borrowing somewhat.
All right, we've got some messages coming through on WhatsApp. Dan Okuda says, good morning. There is nothing bad in borrowing, but the question is, what has the government done with the borrowing? Borrowing for consumption and not production will ruin any economy. Thank you for your message. And let's go on to this one, and it's coming from Pastor Dapo, and he says, good morning. We go around borrowing money from foreign governments, yet we are still busy warning them not to interfere with our internal elections. You think they aren't worried about who emerges, or that they aren't interested in who will give them their money back? All right, thank you for that message, Pastor Dapo. Let's move on to The Guardian. Senate plans reviews of waivers and others to generate extra funds for government. Now, President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, has hinted that the 9th Senate would expand the remaining 6 months of its lifespan to review or renegotiate some waivers, tax holidays, and concessions granted to investors and businesses by the federal government. He said it's become expedient and instructive due to leakages in tax collection and remittances amid revenue shortfalls and high debt profile.
Well, it's interesting that the Senate considers that there should be a way out of the deficit situation of the budget. And they think that one of the places they can look to is to see what has been granted to companies in terms of waivers. But this has got implications because these incentives were given to foreign investors and possibly foreign investors and investors generally to encourage them to put their money in this economy. So for this economy where you establish, the companies are established, they practically generate their own power. They provide a lot of infrastructure they need, and of course, that's one of the examples is in the telecoms industry, where the telecom companies cited their prices to be hinged on the fact that they have to provide a backbone for what they are doing at their cost. So basic things that are taken for granted in other economies have to be shouldered by investors here. So those things create a reason for government to make incentives possible for investors. Now, if you're going around now to say, we are going to review, I hope that or I assume that in terms of reviewing, they are going to be very circumspect and they're very objective in how much they can give to the companies to continue to encourage them to say, because the economy is not enticing. In many ways, there are a whole lot of challenges that operating in Nigeria creates for businesses. That the results are there, the rewards are there for companies that invest in Nigeria, know that because it's a big market anyway, anywhere in the world, it's one of the biggest economies in terms of numbers and demography. So it's attractive to investors, but there are other inhibiting factors. If you take the oil industry, for example, Nigeria is not very attractive because if as an investor, if you can lose all you produce, what are you doing? You take money from banks and wherever to finance your activity, and at the end of the day, you can't really produce or get the result of what you spent your money on. So these incentives and waivers are intended to encourage investors. So I hope that they are going to be pragmatic in looking at it, but it's a good effort because a lot is ceded to companies, investors when they are coming in, and in course of production as they go on.
All right, we'll take a quick break, and when we return, the conversation will continue right here on Freshly Pressed.
First Bank.
We'll be back on in a minute. Thank you.
So, Zibby, you said your dad, what's the name of your dad?
He probably finished way before you, Lawrence Aluku. He actually worked in Shell as well. So,
Really?
Yeah.
He's my old boy, and I'm the national secretary of the Old Boys Association.
Really?
So tell him to come and join us.
I'll tell him. Once, he was doing a Google search for his school, and then he found a lot of information, and I tracked down one of his old teachers. It was amazing. Tell him
we started a global old students association, and we are currently trying to encourage as many of our old students to join.
Oh, awesome.
Nice.
I'll tell him. I'll tell him.
Wonderful.
Small world. All right, we're back on in 5.
First back. Smooth 98.1.
It's freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1. It's Zibby here, and we've got our analysts Ikemesit and Joseph. Now we're moving on to this day. Again, Buhari warns foreign missions not to interfere in Nigeria's local politics. As Nigeria prepares to head to the polls, the president has reiterated his call to foreign diplomats in the country not to meddle in the nation's local politics. And he gave this warning on Thursday while receiving letters from the ambassadors of Switzerland, Sweden, Ireland, Thailand, Senegal, and South Sudan at the State House in Abuja.
I honestly don't know what the president is talking about, that there are diplomatic missions that actively interfere in local politics. I mean, one, that's not their remit. Two, making comments about the general direction of country, right, and not necessarily say funding priorities. I mean, diplomats have to do things like make courtesy calls, right? They need to, visit interested, political and economic actors. They need to carry on, right, political and economic engagements. That's literally what they are in the country for, in order to obviously further invest their home countries. But Nigerian diplomats do that in foreign countries as well, right, where we have high commissions and we have diplomatic missions. So the substance of what the president is saying, I think, the bit hit and miss with respect to this, because none of these guys are actively trying to subvert or, color or otherwise influence, right, politics or the political process in Nigeria, such that materially or in a way that leads to any material change on the ground. So I think the president's warning in air quotes.
All right, we've got some messages coming through. This one is from AGK, and he says, good morning. So it has been established that there are massive leakages in our revenue generation processes, but the plugging of those leakages is not of concern to the Senate. They want to review waivers and incentives to investors and companies while the leakages will continue unabated. So what have they done? Gilbert Musa says, good morning. On taking advantage of high crude oil prices when it was $100 a barrel. The big question is, what did Nigeria do with the excess crude money generated between 1990 and 1992 during the Gulf unrest in the Middle East? Thank you for your messages. Please keep them coming. 0809 444 0981. Let's move back to Punch. Federal government woos Spanish investors for 7 oil blocks. Now, the federal government on Thursday wooed Spanish investors to invest in Nigeria's deep offshore mini bid round, as they also announced that Spain would support Nigeria with security in the oil and gas sector. And this happened during a meeting between the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timi Silva, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Spain, Jose Alvarez, who led a large delegation of key investors from Spain to Nigeria.
I just said a while ago that Nigeria is not a very attractive sector in the oil industry for investment, because if you talk about the insecurity in the country, you're talking about crude oil theft, and all the kinds of things that are plaguing the industry. And also, Nigeria has one of the highest cost of production of crude oil, actually. It's one of the highest. But the truth is that it is still attractive. And that's the interesting thing. Nigeria is very attractive in terms of the fact that the crude you produce is very beautiful, sweet. It's called sweet crude because it has less sulfur and it can be refined with less at less cost. So there is that appeal. But when you look as an investor, as we say, capital is shy of uncertainty. So if you're going to put your money somewhere you're not sure of politically and all that, otherwise you would be reluctant to. There must be something that could be traded to lure the Spanish to want to come in and invest in the oil industry. Perhaps maybe if you say, okay, they're going to support the security, maybe they have the technology to support in terms of security, that will help. But talking about security of the industry, of the oil industry, it is an industry of its own. I can tell you that coming from that background, there is a security industry for the oil industry itself. It's a sub-industry and it runs to billions of naira. And those who are in it, I don't know how easily they would want anybody to come in that play. But then let's watch and see. There's nothing wrong. Investment in our portfolio, oil and gas portfolio, has been very poor over the past 10 years. There are very fewer rig deployments. Rig deployments simply tell you how much new oil wells are being drilled, and so let's see some mobility in the industry. Maybe this will be able to achieve something. It will be a good result for us.
Okay, moving on to The Guardian. LASUTH upgrades infrastructure to address medical tourism. Now, the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital has upgraded its infrastructure to what it calls international standards. The chief medical director disclosed this yesterday and saying this move was to keep in tune with global practices via continuous facility upgrades, renovations, constructions, improved clinical capacity, and training of members and staff.
So, good call round. Obviously, a lot more needs to be done, but it appears as though LASUTH is taking a good step in the right direction. You do need a lot more, though, for medical tourism. First, supporting infrastructure has to be good, and a lot of that lies outside of the powers of LASUTH, right? Your transport, for example, road transport, right? Airport transport, if you're going to attract people from outside the country, supporting infrastructure like internet, for example. Customer care, though, also is very critical. And this has recently had there is, for the countries that have been able to crack it, the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, India, Thailand, right? It's growth industry. It fuels and powers a lot of, education, training, and upskilling of talent. But you have to think about tourism in the way you think about regular tourism, right? So the hospitals have to be comfortable enough, support infrastructure has to exist, right? And basically patients have to be made comfortable because international patients typically pay premium. So good step, good thinking generally, but there's a lot more that needs to be planned last week destination for patients, for domestically and abroad.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ikemesit, and thank you, Joseph. That is all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
And that's it for Freshly Pressed. Do stay with us. You can, of course, keep in touch with us via our social media pages and our WhatsApp as well. And keep those messages coming. We can keep the conversation going on our social media. This is Smooth Breakfast with me, Zibby.
First Bank.
All right. Thank you and have a brilliant day ahead.
You too.
Bye.
Please let me have your number.
Okay.
Yeah, sir.
Can I give it to you now?
Okay, let me see. Do I have my
Or I
phone?
can tell Mariam, the producer, to text it to you.
Yeah, I asked her to get it from you so she can
Okay.
fix it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Awesome.